You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Ripple, Litecoin, and more. Cryptocurrencies and other digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity. Provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments on everything from coins to tokens, futures, and even OTC options. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVOL, home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CeFi options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVOL Analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again for the Crypto Rundown, the program here on the old Options Insider Radio Network, where we go beyond our traditional stomping grounds of your Apple, your VIX, your Tesla, your SPY options. Look a little bit further afield, see what's going on over there in them thar crypto hills. Talk about the Bitcoin, the ETH, all the other fun stuff out there, the volume, the volatility, the SKEW, the OI, all that good stuff, and a whole bunch more. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-exciting Options Insider Radio Network. Got a whole bunch of great content in store for you again this week, including our next great pro Q&A session. Mr. Scott Nations returning to the hot seat tomorrow to answer your questions. How nice is he? So head on in there. If you haven't joined up in the secret club yet, you know where to go. theoptionsinsider.com/secret club. It's a fun place to go. You get access to the pro Q&As every Tuesday. You get options oddities every Friday, all the live stuff throughout the week. You get all the giveaways we do in there, all the fun stuff, and a whole bunch more. And of course, if you listen live after the fact, especially for a show like this, we do love to hear from all of you folks out there. So keep sending in those questions and comments. Again, you guys help direct the show, so we do love to hear from you. Let's see who we're hearing from on the old program today. It is time to roll out the Crypto Hot Seat.
Forget about cold storage. It's time to turn up the heat on thought leaders from the world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time to take their place on the Crypto Hot Seat.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Crypto Hot Seat, the portion of the show where we welcome on guests from throughout the world of crypto derivatives and indeed beyond, and proceed to pick their brains for the benefit of you, the listener. And next up on the program is a newcomer to the program and indeed to the network. He is Ed McCormack, the founder of DCHAINED. Ed, welcome to the Crypto Rundown program.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And Ed, as we are wont to do with all of our first-timers here on the network, why don't you go ahead and give our audience a bit of an overview of your background in crypto finance, as well as what it is you guys do over there at DCHAINED.
Yeah, so as you mentioned before, I founder and CEO of DCHAINED, which is a registered investment advisor firm based out of Virginia, where we are focused on providing education for people both looking to get started in crypto and those who are looking to expand their horizons outside of just the comfy nest of a Coinbase or a Uniswap. So we've built that up over the last 2 years, so much so that in the last month we actually just launched our blockchain fund. So I'm in addition to DCHAINED, also managing partner of our crypto hedge fund. So in terms of my background, aside from these two ventures, as I alluded to, I'm a registered investment advisor representative out of the state of Virginia. Also have my broker dealer and investment banking licenses. Before then, I've been investing in the crypto space for 10 years, all while last 15 years built my career in the tech sector.
So you were pretty early on then in the crypto space, investing over a decade ago. What was it that first lured you to the dark side of crypto, Ed?
Well, it's funny because when you say these words lured, it sort of feels like if you want to trade options in crypto today, it's a little bit of a gray area. Well, CME Group actually just announced today that they're rolling out micro futures. So I guess things might get a little easier, but it took a little bit of work. It was a little bit of elbow grease you had to put in. You couldn't just log on to Deribit and just start trading. Back in 2011, when I got involved in the space, you had to put a concerted effort. You had to go to a MoneyGram at that time or Western Union, send money over to this one service called BitInstant, who would then credit your money onto Mt. Gox. So a bit of a manual and laborious process, but it was certainly one that was very exciting for me and very interesting. And although I wish I kept a lot of my Bitcoin that I bought at that point, I kind of chickened out.
I was going to say, you should be dialing me from your own private island right now.
Well, yeah, for my own mental health, I try not to look at what those prices were that I was buying. I knew about 6 to 9 months after I got in, there was a lot of heat going around Silk Road and around Mt. Gox, and I had no precedent to look at where a 7x, which is what I was having at that point. I was like, you know what, I'm going to take my money, just like you do in a casino. Put your chips in your pocket and you walk away from the table. I wasn't waiting for a knock on the door from the FBI, which, if you recall at that point, I mean, they were threatening everybody.
Yeah, you could have got caught up in all that Mt. Gox and you could have had nothing at the end of the day.
Exactly. And but it was fun. And even thinking back 5 years, not even going back to 2011, if you were talking to someone about crypto, the first thing on their mind was they assumed that you're either hiring assassins or dealing in illegal drugs. So to hear that Goldman Sachs now is involved and Jamie Dimon finally came around, it's kind of surreal.
Yes, it has come a long way from there. But let's dive into some of the headlines of today. You are joining us at an interesting, some might say an opportune, I guess it depends on your outlook in the crypto space. If you're hardcore bullish, maybe not, but we of course are in the midst of a bit of a pullback. Bitcoin diving back below the 50K level as we come into showtime. Part of what you guys do over there at DCHAINED is, of course, education. So I'm sure you guys have been lighting it up over the past week. People hitting you up saying, what's going on? What's going on? What's driving this sell off? So Ed, what are your thoughts here on this recent pullback in the leading crypto, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's crypto is not immune to, I think, what some of the macro forces are in action right now in overall markets. I mean, you see a lot of fear around inflation. You see concerns around sort of a growth bubble from China, and of course, people are looking around at and really trying to see, how do they hedge? Where do they go from here? There's a lot of concern around, if the stock market is potentially strained in terms of the value over the next 12 to 24 months, and bond prices are sort of being suppressed, where do they go? And, you see, I was looking at gold earlier today and just looking at how gold has really performed in the last year. And if you look at the fact that it dropped against the US dollar while CPI actually went up, I think there's just a lot of concern around where do you put your money. And For some people, it's put your money in cash and potentially see what effects happen there. Others, you need derivatives as a means of hedging against inflation and increasing your overall net worth. So people are starting to look at in crypto, what is the role that Bitcoin plays? What's the role that Ethereum plays? And ultimately, what's the future of this market? And funny enough that we're talking now, there's actually a House committee meeting on Wednesday to talk about what does that landscape look like, in the very near future.
Well, you mentioned something that's been on the top of mind of a lot of our listeners of late, which is, of course, we have seen markets sell off and crypto sell off kind of right along with it. Not so much today. We're seeing a bit of a rally in the broad markets out there today. But for the last couple of weeks, we have seen whenever it tends to hit the fan, as the old adage says, correlation tends to go to 1, and Bitcoin would sell off right along with the major equity indices. This is a question you get asked about a lot because we certainly have been of late. And what are your thoughts on the overall linkage we've seen of late between Bitcoin and your major equity indices?
Yeah, it's a question we get all the time. And it used to be that there was a negative correlation. But if you just look at the last year or two, how many of these Fortune 500 companies not only have exchanged USD and their reserves for Bitcoin. I mean, MicroStrategy at this point, I think HSBC stopped banking them because they saw them as like a Bitcoin ETF. I forget what the rationale was, but you're seeing more of these companies either holding these assets themselves or becoming more ingrained in terms of the principal focus and really the potential growth of their business centered around crypto. Look no further than Visa or PayPal. Facebook even just changed their name. So you're seeing this growing correlation between some of the largest companies out there and crypto. But what's interesting is, what does that correlation look like on the hedge side? And where you continue to see that there is that negative correlation that stays intact is US dollar and Bitcoin, or US dollar and Ethereum. So it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out.
You touched on the derivatives a few times. Obviously, we speak to the options audience here. I'm curious for you, do you have a lot of use case for crypto derivatives? Is this an area you've dipped your toes in, or are you kind of still waiting and seeing over there?
No, we're very active in it. We're very active in it, especially on the DCHAINED capital side. A big focus of ours is, in markets like this, how do you not only preserve your capital, but also harvest volatility? So we're certainly very, very active in leveraging the options market, especially using many of the different decentralized exchanges out there, at our disposal.
So what are some of your go-to strategies these days with crypto derivatives, sir?
Yeah, purchasing put protections at varying maturities, setting your spread and moneyness levels at such a point where you're not only getting the protection of the potential black swan drawdown event, but also if you structure it the right way, you could use it very much as an offensive tool. And if you look at some of the different products that are offered out there, DYDX, LEDGERX, these are platforms that emerging fund like ours would have to spend $100,000 to try and have 3 guys sit on the beach in the Cayman Islands so that you could try to get a deribit seat. It's becoming more open, and you're able to start leveraging a lot of these delta hedge strategies to help both preserve your capital in market downturn, but then also try to make as much money in those markets as well for your LPs.
And you mentioned the CME futures. They, of course, as you mentioned, are listing a new micro ETH as we speak. It went live today. By the way, listeners, we'll have Tim McCourt from CME on tomorrow, an early edition of TWIFO, apart from our usual Thursday episode, to talk all about those micro ETH futures. I know a lot of you out there are ETH fans. You want something a little bit more bite-sized to sink your teeth into. This micro ETH future might be just a thing. But I know for a lot of the RIAs and asset managers we've had on, Ed, they want to trade crypto. They're interested in it, but the options, pun intended, for them were few and far between when it came to regulated products. And then, of course, CME came on the scene, and that kind of opened the doors to a lot of them. These products you've been intrigued by, the futures, and indeed maybe even beyond that, the options on the futures, Ed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you'll see, CME is the gold standard, when it comes to, overall institutional exposure to options. But I think we'll see a changing of the guard slightly for, retail investors. There was a acquisition that was started. Hopefully it gets finalized soon, where FTX, which coincidentally has a U.S. founder, not living in the U.S., funny enough, to run this exchange, who just recently purchased LEDGERX. And that acquisition, when it gets finalized, is going to allow FTX, which has a very different product overseas than here in the U.S., to basically have, ultimately a regulated, designated contract market. They'll have, the swap execution facility. They'll have the derivatives clearing organization. So once that deal is finalized overnight, you have basically the framework for a pretty powerful platform that people can take advantage of here in the U.S. from a retail standpoint. And, that doesn't evade necessary regulation. I think we see, in many of the Asian markets in the crypto space, what happens when there's unfettered access to just ungodly amounts of leverage that people can take without really knowing what they're doing. But I think what this is going to shape up to be is, a whole new market that, traders can leverage and expand sort of the returns that they can gain in a whole new asset class, which will be very exciting. And of course, CME opening these micro, ETH futures, I think is going to be great because not everyone can, buy a contract with 50 ETH in it. So
yeah, they're a little bit beefy.
Those contracts
out there. But you're right. The LEDGERX deal is an interesting one. We just had the LEDGERX folks on the show not too long ago, a few months ago. Of course, since then, you're right. This news has broken. They were acquired by FTX. FTX, not a household name yet here in the UX, but maybe this acquisition will start turning that around, at least from the crypto perspective, because LEDGERX was really one of the only other regulated entities you could go to here in the US to trade crypto options. The primary use case, and they even admitted this on the show pretty much, was covered calls. They had a physically delivered contract, so people who were sitting on Bitcoin had a nice use case to use their contracts as a way to actually sell some Bitcoin to the upside if they were so inclined. They had some issues, as they mentioned. They didn't have auto exercise and a lot of other things, a lot of holes they were looking to fix in their platform. So hopefully this FTX deal will give them the funding and the wherewithal to do so. It sounds like, Ed, you're pretty bullish on this deal and its ramifications for the U.S. options market here for crypto going forward.
Fingers crossed. And there's, as I mentioned before, there's a pretty big House committee meeting on Wednesday where Sam Bankman-Fried, who's the founder of FTX, and his group, because he's also founded Alameda Research, they're going to present, sort of what the future of digital assets look like and how this could become, more accessible and ultimately fit into the current regulatory landscape. But you're also going to have folks from Coinbase joining. You're going to have Circle, who's the creator of the USD coin, USDC. So this is going to be a big week, and it's exciting to see. And the fact is, you have more resources now with many of the big banks, Bank of America, despite the fact that Brian Moynihan said in May that he would never offer any banking service from Bank of America to crypto companies, and then 6 weeks later, they roll out a beautiful futures contract trading desk. So with Bank of America and Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley getting involved, I think you're going to see an acceleration in this space, and it become more readily available, outside of just a few different markets, which is a great thing.
Well, you mentioned we have a big week ahead of us this week, but of course we had a big week a little over a month ago in the Bitcoin space with the launch of the hotly anticipated BITO, aka the ProShares Bitcoin ETF. I never saw so many people suddenly interested in things like negative roll yield and position limits on futures and all sorts of things. But of course, the BITO ETF finally made it possible for a lot of folks out there to trade options in their securities accounts on a Bitcoin denominated product. This, of course, went the way of the futures, which made it intriguing for us here as well. I'm sure for you, Ed, you guys at DCHAINED, people had to be blowing your doors up over the last month with all this BITO talk. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on BITO? Have you traded the options on it? And what are your thoughts on them going the futures route as opposed to what a lot of people wanted, which was the spot?
So I have not had a chance yet to, it's been a little bit of a hectic couple of weeks, last 2-3 weeks, especially with some of the alternative coins out there, the Ethereums, the Avalanche, etc. So I haven't had too much time to get involved there, but I mean, you hit the nail on the head. There's a very hot debate going on right now, and even Grayscale lobbed a big protest against the SEC around why the futures ETFs are permissible, because ultimately you're speculating on price via derivatives, while spot ETF, which resembles very much as you're holding the asset, why that's not. And it's a very interesting sort of dynamic here, because if you look at one of the big arguments that's been made to several different firms that were just rejected in the last 2 weeks is none of these firms are able to prove that they're able to provide any obstacle to manipulation. Which, I mean, if you're taking an asset that has a finite supply and you're effectively creating speculation, and you can use derivatives that have no supply, no cap, it's actually much easier to do on the futures ETF standpoint. I think Bank of America put out a study about a year ago that talks it's only about $92 million of down pressure needs to be applied to move Bitcoin 1%. So just very interesting to see sort of this fight. And I think that this is going to be a fight that is certainly not going to get put away anytime soon. There's a lot of people looking for that spot ETF.
You think we'll get some more insights into that spot ETF from these meetings this week? Because you're right. That is the other question we're getting all the time. Will we get a spot ETF? It did seem like, reading the tea leaves, it didn't seem like that was coming anytime soon. But it sounds like maybe you're a little bit more bullish on those prospects, Ed, than some others are.
No, I don't know. When Gary Gensler came in as head of the SEC, I was very optimistic. I think a lot of people were, just based on his background and the fact that he's very intimately aware of cryptocurrency from his days at MIT. I don't think he's been necessarily someone who's put their neck out too much on the line for it. And I think that you're going to need a lot more cooperation from the SEC and/or some type of intervention where either the House stipulates, is there going to be a single regulatory body that's going to oversee these markets, especially when it comes to options, where the CFTC is certainly the leading regulatory group for many of these markets. Are they going to play a bigger role? So I mean, right now we're sitting in a gray area where you have 2 or 3 different regulatory groups fighting and sort of lobbing things over the fence at each other to see who can hinder and hold back this alternative asset class. And I think hopefully we'll have some better clarification. I don't expect much this week, but shortly after the new year, we'll certainly make some strides in the right direction.
Of course, a lot of our guests on the show these days have been all hot and bothered about all things DeFi. The world of decentralized finance has grown and exploded quite a bit over the course of the past year. This is an area I think you've been paying attention to as well, Ed, particularly from an options perspective. What are your thoughts on the whole decentralized explosion out there, sir?
I love it. We certainly don't have a fund, but we certainly don't have an education platform without it. And I think it's been fascinating to see, on many levels, outside the access that you get to these types of investment vehicles, which previously would have required you to structure yourself in a certain way internationally. if you just see sort of where a lot of the money now is coming from in DeFi, it's been fascinating. You've seen the rise of DYDX and a whole new investor class that has not needed DeFi, which is the Chinese investor. They would just lean in on Binance or Wobi or OKX. Now that those exchanges have been shut down by Chinese government to their citizens, many of these investors have had to move into the DeFi space for the first time. So it's fascinating to see. And in saying that, there's some real big opportunities as well for those people who are looking to also potentially make money on the decentralized exchanges.
Well, we're coming up against it here, Ed, but before we go, I'm curious, obviously you're an education platform as well as a fund and everything else over there at DCHAINED. What are some of the other hot educational topics, the hot questions you guys are receiving over there at DCHAINED right now?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions about what's going on with Ripple, what's going to be the impact. It's certainly one that we're watching very closely as it relates to, what could the implications be if the SEC were to settle. And I think it would be very ironic to see that Ripple Labs is the creator and arguably they manage Ripple. I think that's the Howey test question, but it'd be very ironic to see if they get through this unscathed, if they wind up filing for IPO with the SEC. So I think that'll be fun to watch. And, I think it'll be something that a lot of traders in the space are going to keep a very close eye on because depending on the outcome, you can certainly expect, at least the crypto market will react.
Yeah, Ripple has been kind of off the books for a lot of our listeners out there who are interested in it, want to trade it. And of course, this lingering issue with the SEC kind of hovering over its head. Hopefully, you're right. Hopefully we can get something cleared up and we'll have some sort of certainty one way or the other. And if it's good, then people can get back to actually trading XRP the way they used to. Before we get out of here, speaking of questions, we have some live questions coming in from our chat. By the way, you're welcome, Luigi, on the covered calls and BITO. You're right. It is an attractive setup right now. They're paying you a lot for the covered calls. If you are intrigued by it, you can go that way, go collards, either way. They're pretty attractive setups out there in BITO right now. But he has another question. He wants to know if you, Ed, have any thoughts about using PayPal as a crypto broker. So do you have any thoughts on PayPal as a crypto broker, Ed?
No, I see PayPal. There's certainly, I think that Dan Schulman, who's their CEO, has done a phenomenal job of integrating crypto front and center in their service. But from a brokerage standpoint, I think that there are a few other alternatives out there that are just a little bit better positioned, especially from an institutional standpoint. You'll see BitGo, which got acquired by Galaxy Digital. They're in partnership and speaking with MetaMask on an institutional hot wallet solution. I think that you see where Coinbase is headed and what they're investing a lot of money into. For me, I would go, those two routes. I think that they're very, very well positioned, along with, when FTX starts to make a bigger press into the US, that would round out the top three for me in terms of, where I would start looking at.
Well, Ed, I appreciate you joining us here on the Crypto Hot Seat. We kept you a little later than we thought, but a lot of fun stuff to talk about. But before we get rolling into the Bitcoin breakdown, if folks want to check you out over there in DCHAINED, maybe they have some follow-up questions, where should they go? What should they do?
Yep. Come check us out, DCHAINED.com. So it's DCHAINED. Or come check out our YouTube channel. We're constantly putting out new market analysis and talking about emerging trends in this space. A lot of talk around options. So, and that's just youtube.com/DCHAINED. The letter D, chained.
There you go. Check them out on the old web or indeed on the old YouTubes. Meanwhile, it's time for us to keep on rolling. It is time for the Bitcoin breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trending activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown, the portion of the show where we do just that. We break down all the price action and the vol and the SKEW and all the other good stuff in the world's leading digital asset. Of course, we're talking about the big dog, Bitcoin, a little bit smaller, I should say really a lot smaller than it was this time last show. Coming into showtime, we have broken through the 50K level in the wrong direction, at least for the crypto bulls out there. Coming into showtime, we were at 49,151 listeners. That's down nearly 9,000 handles. We were at a 58,111 this time last week out there, listeners. So quite the run to the dark side. Of course, we saw that sell-off exacerbate. It seemed like for a while there, we were going to break the 40K handle in the wrong direction. The sell-off got down to 42,000 almost exactly last Friday, the 3rd. That means we had a range this past week, since our last show, listeners. We had a range of 59,223 on the upside and 42,019 on the downside. You're talking a 17,000 point range in Bitcoin over the course of the past week. That's some price action, to put it mildly, out there. So, this, again, we just talked about with our guests. Hope to see you guys enjoyed that. We love bringing on all sorts of great guests into the crypto hot seat for you folks to listen to and learn from, and just discussing the correlation we're seeing out there with crypto across a lot of the other major asset classes, and certainly a lot of price action to get to. Of course, all that price action translates to a lot of volatility. And on our last show, we were at a 78 vol. Coming into today's show, things have settled down a little bit. We're back to about an 82%. But of course, in the interim, in that madness, when we were threatening to break that 40K level, vol got higher. It spiked up back into the triple digits, got up to about 103 on the 4th. That was the high for vol in between our shows. So back into the triple digits. But as it has been for pretty much the better part of this past year, these spikes in Bitcoin vol are short-lived, and now we're back down to a few points higher than we were last week. If you just looked show to show, you would think nothing really happened in the interim, at least from a net vol perspective. A little bit of a tick up, but that's about it. We saw a similar move, a little bit more actually, a little bit more of a tick up out there on BitVol, which is, of course, Simon Ho's Bitcoin VIX. It was a little bit shy of an 84 on our last show, about 83.95. That is looking a little bit firmer this week at about an 87.3. So that has ticked up a little over 3 points since our last show. SKEW-wise, we saw, as you might expect, some big moves in SKEW over the course of the past week. On our last show, it was negative 5.5. Today's show has gotten more negative, down to negative 7, almost 7.5. And in between, though, it swung firmly in the other direction, got up to positive 3.3 on the 4th. So we had a pretty wide range in terms of SKEW. And that's also reflected out in Simon's BitSKEW numbers. 71.75 on our last show. This show, 94. So huge swings out there in that BitSKEW, which is pretty fascinating. Let's get out to the open interest. By the way, the OI, the vol, all these analytics we're giving you right now coming at you, courtesy of our friends over there in Genesis Volatility, aka GVol.io. That's the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires in all things crypto options. You want to see these vol levels for yourselves. You want to look at the OI across the different leading venues. You want to compare and contrast different SKEWs, whatever it is that floats your boat. You want to see unusual activity. It's all there and a whole bunch more. GVol.io is the place to go. If you did that, you'd see the open interest right now on Bitcoin over there on Deribit. We're all keying off the leading venue, which is still Deribit, at about almost 131,000, about 130,800. It's up about 9,000 contracts from this time last week. So we have seen the OI tick up. But remember, I said it is going to take a decent sell-off to get those puts moving again. And we have seen the puts tick up a little bit in terms of net OI. They're up to about 67,600. It's up about 3,200 contracts from this time last week. So we're at a little bit less than 2-to-1 calls over puts, but calls are still leading the dance. But it hasn't been the big catch-up. We're nowhere near 1-to-1 out there in Bitcoin land. It probably won't be anytime soon, at least until we get maybe another move that's sustained to the dark side like we saw there with that brief dalliance with the 42,000 level. Let's look at the size positions from an expiration perspective. Where are you folks lining up? It still is all December all the time. That's where all the action is. 102,000 contracts open in December right now. It's only up about 1,000. So that shows a lot of back and forth was on the tape over the course of the past week. March is ticking up a little bit. It's up about 1,200 contracts to 25,500. And that's a distant number 2. And everything else is well behind that. Not even worth mentioning a number 3. There's some weeklies in December that have a few thousand contracts open, but nothing can hold a candle to the big dog that is the monthly December contract. Let's see what's the size position right now in terms of Strike, where are you folks open? Where are the big positions in Bitcoin options right now? Let's go from the bottom to the top. Let's mix it up. Let's go up to the 200,000 strike for number 5. That has 8,600 contracts open. That's surprisingly exactly unched from this time last week, which is strange given how much price action we've had over the course of the past week. Number 4 is the 70,000 strike. That has 9,000 contracts open. It's up about 1,100 from this time last week. Number 3, the 120 strike, the 120,000 strike. That has 10,000 contracts open. It's actually down 1,000 from this time last week. Number 2, the 80,000 strike. That has 11,000 contracts open. It's actually up about 1,100 from this time last week. And number 1 still is the par strike, aka the 100,000 strike. That has 15,000 contracts open. That also hasn't changed. It's interesting how little movement we had in our top 5 strikes and top 5 positions, given how much price action there was over the course of the past week. Let's see if that translated into some actual notional volume out there. First, let's look at the notional open interest. That is actually pretty much about the same as it was this time last week. We had about 10 billion open on Deribit and a little north of 11 billion if you add in all the other venues. And that's pretty much the same again this week. 10 billion open on Deribit and a little bit north of 11 billion if you start adding in the rest. LEDGERX, by the way, number 2 right now, listeners, with 315 million open. Number 3 would be CME, 299, so hot on their heels, but not quite there. Number 4, we got OKEX, 237 million. Number 5, we got Bit.com, 225 million. And of course, the big dog, Deribit, with 10 billion out there. But we did see some volume, as you might expect, over the course of the past week. 2 big heavy days, Friday and Saturday, really kind of dominating the rest of the week. Friday, we saw almost 1.5 billion worth of notional volume going up. Saturday, eclipsing that, getting up to 1.7 billion. Now, we didn't quite see the 2+ or even the 3 billion levels that we saw earlier this year when the sell-off kicked in the first time back in that April timeframe, but still pretty heavy volume, certainly compared to what we were seeing back a few months ago in the end of summer there when we were languishing around a couple of 100 million on any given day in terms of notional volume. So a pretty, I'd say a heavy week, but those 2 days really eclipsing everything else out there. In terms of what's going on, we were talking about CME products with Ed earlier in the crypto hot seat. Let's see what's going on out there. The options doing pretty decent paper. The most recent trading day was Friday, and they did 234 contracts. That's a decent amount for these contracts that don't tend to trade a lot, but now in the post-BITO world, they are putting up a little bit more paper. Even though the OI is down a bit this week, we had some expirations roll off the board. It took nearly 400 contracts with them, so that's down to about 1,200 contracts OI. Futures, same deal. The OI ticking down a little bit there as well, down about 2,300 contracts to a little bit north of 13,000 on the open interest front. In terms of trading, the most recent day, obviously Friday, was about 13,000 contracts going up there as well. So not an enormously active day, which is a little bit surprising given the price action out there, but it wasn't nothing either. So let's see what's going on the micro front. Again, that's where a lot of you folks are going to be playing. And now you have a new one to add to that front. You guys excited by micro ETH? Hit us up. Let us know. I'm curious. You guys going to be sinking your teeth into this? I know for a lot of you, ETH is kind of your go-to vector in crypto. So maybe this micro product will finally get you a chance to play over there on CME. The OI on the micro Bitcoin futures actually down a bit this week as well. Again, a lot of OI rolling off the board with expiration. On the weekly contracts, 8,000 contracts coming off the board this past week, 33,000 contracts open right now. But we saw more than that going up on Friday. We saw 43,000 contracts trading again on Friday. So a pretty active day on the micro side. So even if the big institutions weren't slinging size on Friday, the smaller traders were coming in slinging 43,000 contracts. Meanwhile, we got to keep on rolling. It is time to explore the rest of the crypto landscape. It is time to launch into the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, let's get to the altcoin universe. Let's start, as we are wont to do, breaking down our top 10. Our producers like doing this for you listeners. They keep expanding it. It's no longer a top 10. Now we're at a top 13 because number 13 is Shiba Inu, selling off a little bit. I know some of you in the chat won't like that. It's down to about 19.5 billion out there right now. Number 12 is Avalanche at 21.8 billion. That one looks like it has sold off about 21% over the past week as well. That one was kind of on fire. But again, a draining tide sucks down all boats these days, and that certainly seems to be the case out here in the altcoin universe. Number 11, Doge, 23 billion, almost exactly. Doge back in the 17-cent range. That's lower than it's been in quite some time, off almost 19% over the course of the past week. Terra, number 10. Now we're getting to the actual top 10 listeners. Terra has had a good week, actually, up 21%. Everything else is selling off. Terra on the rampage, 24 billion for number 10. Number 9, Polkadot, 26.8 billion, off about 25.5% over the course of the past week. Number 8, XRP. I was just talking about this. Will we finally get some settlements on XRP so we can decide once and for all, can we touch this thing? Can we not? It's kind of just hanging in limbo right now, but it's good for number 8 right now at 37.7 billion, off about 18.2% over the course of the past week. Number 7, USD coin, 40.8 billion. It's actually up slightly on the week, but anything that's green over the past week is impressive. Number 6 is Cardano, a 44.8 billion, selling off about 15.6%, down to about $1.36. It was threatening the 2-handle not too long ago, so that's sold off quite a bit over the past month or change. Number 5, it's Solana, back below the 200 level. Who thought it could possibly happen again? 189 and change coming into Showtime, puts it at about 58 billion. It's off about 8.6% over the course of the past week. Number 4 is Tether at about 75.6 billion. That's actually kind of unched on the week as well, which again is impressive. And number 3, Binance Coin, 95.1 billion. And that's off about nearly 8% on the week. Number 2 is ETH. It's about a little bit shy of half a trillion, 498 billion to be precise out there. That's off a little over 4% on the week. And of course, the big dog is Bitcoin, back below the 1T level, 932 billion on the market cap front. Let's get to ETH vol. You know, a similar story. By the way, ETH had an interesting range over the course of the past week as well. Coming into Showtime, we were at a little bit shy of 4,200, about 4,196. On our last show, of course, we had about 4,400 exactly. So you're talking the net, just about $200 throughout a show. Not a lot for ETH. That kind of belies the price action we had in between shows. We saw the rally get up to 47.82. That's a pretty lofty level for ETH. And then, of course, it turned around. That was on Wednesday. By Friday, it was 1,200 handles lower at 35.12. So quite the range out there in ETH. And all of that to settle out just a couple hundred points below where it was this time last week. So we saw a similar pattern play out in ETH vol over the course of the past week that we saw in Bitcoin vol. On our last show, it was 94%. It spiked in between up to 114%. That was on the 4th, the same day that Bitcoin vol topped out. And coming into today's show, it's still frothy, but just a tick below the 100% level at 98% right now. So flirting with triple digits, but not quite there. SKEW-wise, same deal, negative 2.3 on our show last week, spiked all the way to almost positive 3 on the 4th, and now back to negative 5.1 coming into today's show. We did see some decent gains out here in the OI, though. Coming into Showtime, he had about 1.16 million contracts open on the call front. That's up 120,000 from this time last week. So that's a big jump. Puts up to about a little over 500,000, 504,000 open on the put front. It's up 52,000 from this time last week. So even weeks when puts can make gains on an OI front, the calls still outpace them more than 2-1. So still all calls all the time, even though I'd imagine on the depths of that sell-off, we had some put action going on out there. In terms of the notional value of the OI out there, that has ticked up since our last show. Had about 6 billion open last show and about 7 billion on this show. And if you're looking for other venues, there aren't a heck of a lot. It's pretty much all Deribit all the time. If you look at some others, you got about 120 million worth of notional open on OKEX, 100 million on bit.com. LEDGERX has 52 million. So you add in all three of those, you're looking right around a little bit north of $250 million, I should say. But outside of that, not a heck of a lot of OI, really. It's still all Deribit all the time out there. In terms of action, we did see another decent week. We actually saw one day hitting the 1B level again. It's been a while since we hit that. We flirted with that a bunch of times over the course of the past few months, where we seemed like we were closing in 791 in 831 that we saw this week, but we actually hit the 1B level again on November 30th. So an impressive level, one we haven't hit too many times recently. So interesting stuff. We got close to it on our last show on the 26th, 937 million, but not quite there. This past week, we did get it, though, November 30th, and 831 million going up on the 4th, 785 million on the 3rd. So pretty active week, all things considered. Let's go to where you folks are lining up. What are the size positions in ETH options right now? Let's go to the expirations first. As you might imagine, it's all December all the time. 710,000 contracts open in December. It's up nearly 50,000 from this time last week. March, a distant number 2, only 38,000 contracts. We go from 710 to 38. It just shows you how much size differential we're talking here between December and everything else. March, though, is up 20,000, so it has pretty much gained quite a bit over the course of the past week, but not enough to really even come close to December. And again, beyond that, there's nothing else even worth talking about. Let's get on out to the open interest. What are the size positions you guys have on out there right now in ETH options? Let's start at the bottom again. Number 5 is the 3,000 strike. This one came on our radar a few weeks ago and has managed to hang out in the top 5 ever since. Has 65,000 contracts open. It's up about 3,000 this week. Number 4, the 6,000 strike. So jumping up the strike chain there a little bit. 84,000 contracts open there. It's up about 10,000 from this time last week. Number 3 is the 5,000 strike with 110,000 contracts, up about 9,000 from this time last week. Number 2, the 10K strike, 117,000 contracts open. It's up about 20,000 from this time last week. So a lot of action on the 10K strike. And number 1, the most optimistic strike on the board here, 15,000 strike, 120,000 contracts open there. It's up about 7,000. So unlike Bitcoin, which kind of had a lot of nothing on the top 5 in terms of change, a lot of big OI gains here in ETH this week, which is interesting. And again, if you guys are interested in all things ETH, listen to the mini TWIFO we're doing tomorrow with Tim McCourt. That'll be interesting. We'll be talking about all things micro Bitcoin futures. Why are they launching them? We'll see if I can get them to talk about a little bit about BITO too, what they're doing with the position limits out there. But ETH futures, the micro, they actually had just launched as of this morning, and so far we had no volume on them. So I couldn't comment on them yet. We'll have to wait and see when we have some actual numbers coming in for them. The OI on the regular ETH futures is down about 700 to about 47.70 right now. Let's get to some other altcoin, and then we'll get the heck out of Dodge here. Let's see. XRP, we're just talking about this with Ed, holding out there. Last week was almost $1, 97 cents. Coming into today's show, 79 cents. That took a nice drubbing, about 18 cents over the course of the past week. Doge off a little over 4 cents since our last show. It was about 21.60 on our last show. It was about 17.40 on today's show. Litecoin also coming down hard. 206, almost 207 on our last show. 153 this week, off over 53 handles. And again, I broke down some of the others already. Cardano, $1.60 on our last show. $1.35 this week, down a whopping 25 cents. Polkadot, 36.5 last week, 27.18, down nearly $10, about 9.25. Solana, again, one that hasn't had many sell-offs of late. It was 207 last week, 189 this week, down 18 handles. Shiba Inu, you guys won't like it. It was a million points, 4.3 out there, 3.6 this week here. So coming down quite a bit. If you want to know precisely, it's down 0.000007 from this time last week. And let's look really quickly. Yeah, we're kind of coming up against it here. All right, let's go really quickly into some crypto questions.
You've got questions about crypto. Who doesn't? It's time to find out the answers to your crypto questions.
All right, everybody, welcome to the crypto questions. I kind of wanted to just chime in on the question we had in our chat a little bit earlier about PayPal, the notion of PayPal as a crypto broker, because Ed weighed in, he gave his thoughts, and I have to say my thoughts are somewhere along those lines as well. We've already seen a lot of evolution on the crypto quote-unquote broker front. A lot of these brokers try to masquerade as exchanges as well. You know my thoughts on that, listeners. But in general, we have seen a lot of these big leading platforms like your Krakens and your Coinbases spend a lot of money on the front end experience upgrading. So they have some pro offerings now. So a lot of the people in our audience who are a little bit more on the sophisticated side, they might want a little bit better analytics, a little bit better UI experience, a better mobile app, everything else to go along with it. And he's not going to get that from PayPal yet. Not to say it's not coming. I mean, it can come, but it just hasn't been their wheelhouse. And PayPal has never been known for having the best UI. You know, they've had a lot of complaints over the years with their customer service and how they handle their transactions and the fees that they charge and everything else like that. So again, not to say PayPal can't get there. They can't bring on teams and really overhaul their UI, come up with a nice, sophisticated, more pro level offering for a lot of our more advanced users to come in so they can do their charting, they can do their analytics, they can look at all their execution data and the feeds and everything else that they like to do on the more sophisticated platforms. You're just not getting that right now, but it's interesting. And it's certainly interesting to see more big players getting into it. Other people are chatting about crypto.com in the chat here, saying they originally purchased some of their Shiba Inu on crypto.com, and you can lend your crypto and earn interest on. He's getting 6.5% on his ETH for 3 months. Yeah, it's not bad there. I don't have any experience with crypto.com. Obviously, they're making waves in the space right now. They've got some money to burn. They went and acquired the naming rights to the Staples Center. They got Tom Brady and blanking on the actor's name right now, but the guy who was in the Bourne's Identity, all those movies out there. Good Will Hunting. What's his name? Matt Damon. There we go. He's in commercials with them. I think apparently he's an early investor in them too, but clearly they have some capital to burn, so they are making waves right now. I have not utilized their platform, so it's good to hear some firsthand feedback. I will try it around myself. It's getting to be like the point like it is in the option space now. Listen, we have to have a legion of accounts on all these different venues so we can experience them for ourselves. So when you guys ask us questions about them, we could respond intelligently about them. But I have not yet used crypto.com, but I am pretty intrigued by the amount. They're saying you can earn 12.5% on your tether. Well, there you go. Intriguing stuff abounds out there. What are your guys' experiences on the different platforms? What do you folks use? Which platforms do you like? Are you just straight up a Coinbase or you like some others? Hit us up. Let us know. We like to hear from all of you folks out there. All right, everybody. That music means we've come to the end. What a journey it was today. Had a great journey kicked off in the hot seat. Want to thank Ed McCormack from DCHAINED. Check them out yourselves. DCHAINED, DCHAINED.com, or look for them on YouTube as well. Sounds like they're putting out a lot of content over there on the old YouTubes these days. And of course, you know where to go. Kick the tires and light the fires on all the analytics we talked about on the show today. Genesis Volatility, aka GVOL.io, the place to go for all of your crypto analytics needs. We got to get on out of here. We'll be back again. Double feature tomorrow. Tuesday's getting busy again here at Advisor's Option last week. Always have the pro Q&As. Now we have the mini TWIFO coming up, all about mini Ether, or I should say micro Ether. If you're intrigued by that, tune in for that. Of course, if you're in the secret club, get in there now and start asking your questions for Scott Nations. He's a popular one. I'm sure he'll be popular again. So if you got questions about anything options, Scott also will talk a lot about futures too. So if you have questions about futures, maybe even about crypto, hit him up. Get in there now. I got a feeling we're going to have a jam-packed hour on that one. Then back again with all the rest of our content throughout the week. And then back again next Monday. Another crypto rundown. We'll see you then.
This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVOL, home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CeFi options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVOL Analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's MIXLR.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/The Options Insider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.